Hi there, everyone. Welcome to The Next Signal. And this is episode 3. And once again, I'm joined by my great friend, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, president of SLD. And this time by also another good friend of mine, Damien Clothier, who I'll let him introduce himself in a second, but is an AI genius. And we're gonna look at telecoms as we always do, but this time through the lens of AI. So, Damien, why don't you introduce yourself, and then JP will come to you, and we'll kick off some questions.
Great, thank you, Will. AI genius. That's a hard act to follow. Thank you. That was very kind of you. Yeah. So yes, I've spent 20 plus years in the digital space. Sort of the last sort of 8. Running digital marketing for a well-known telco in the Caribbean, and then really sort of just over the last year and a half or so, I've gone 100% all in to AI. So that's very much my area now.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to digging into some of the stories and some of the thoughts. I know you've written a blog on the topic as well, which we'll reference in the notes. But JP, if I hand over to you, do you want to say hello to everyone?
Yeah, I'm Jean-Pierre Lacroix, or JP, and I lead a transformation design agency in Toronto and in Shanghai. And we work with Will for over 20 years, managing major. Actually, Will was our client at Flow, and we managed that through the Caribbean, and the integration of digital and physical and human. And that was a great success. And we started Next Wave as a way of sharing insights in the telco industry. So if you're in the telco industry, marketing, operations, retail, this podcast is for you. I hope you enjoy the insights. We broadcast once a month on topics that are relevant to your industry. So I'll kick it off. My first question, reading, Damien, I read your blog. It's excellent, very detailed, by the way, quite a read. If I look at parallels between the banking industry and the telco industry, there's so many parallels. I'm here in Vegas speaking at a conference, and AI is on every topic. Where the focus on many organizations, and I would say that telcos, is from an efficiency operations standpoint. But some of the smarter institutions are leveraging AI for sentiment analysis. So when I look at, assisted channels, the phone, Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase are using sentiment analysis to get the tone of the customer when they're calling or texting so that they can respond and be, empathetic to the needs and plights of those customers. In your blog, you don't really you do talk about assisted channels and how it provides a dashboard of all the different integrated documents, but you didn't talk about sentiment analysis. I'd love to get your intake on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, JB, you've got a situation where a lot of businesses, especially in the banking and telco world, and why are they important? Because they're the ones that tend to have quite large call centers. So people having to call in, deal with humans, etc. And I think one of the things, and I think it's quite important, so sentiment analysis is not a be-all and end-all in itself, and I think that's quite an important point. It's kind of a, it's merely a part of the wider puzzle. And I think the reason it's so important is that when people call, let's say, for example, here's a really good example, right? I happen to live in the Caribbean. So I could be a little bit rural somewhere, and maybe there's a lot of noise going on. I'm calling in, and the AI agent, because I'm shouting, because I've got everybody around me. So if you don't take sentiment analysis into it, and you've got an AI agent handling it, the AI agent goes, "Oh, I've got a really angry customer." Well, no. You see, this is where context comes into it. And so, yes, I'm speaking loudly because there's an awful lot of background noise around me. And if you've ever spent any time in the Caribbean, music tends to be quite loud on the streets, etc. So sometimes having a call like that is a little challenge, certainly a little challenging. And I think the AI systems and the models that we are seeing coming out now start taking that more human view, because a human could understand that.
Mm.
And I think the beautiful thing, and I'm one of these sort of, I'm part of the AI crowd that actually doesn't mind, I shouldn't really say this, that humans get replaced in some cases with AI. Why? Because anyone who's ever called a call center and got an agent who's got a little bit of an attitude, has a bad day, husband sort of said something mean to them as they walked out the door this morning, someone cut them up into the way into work, and you get a really inconsistent experience. And I think this is one of the problems we have, especially in telcos. You can go into a number of different stores and get a completely different experience, even with the same company. So, and I think, solutions, as you were saying there around, the sentiment and being able to pick these things up, enable a really consistent experience for the customer. Because the AI picks up, you're not angry. You're just in a lot of background noise. Or actually, you are angry. So actually, maybe I need to escalate this in a certain way, or my tone now needs to change to kind of reflect and maybe calm the situation down. And I think that's where we're seeing technology take us now.
The simplest thing, Damien and JP, that I'm looking forward to from a telecoms call center is just, can somebody just use AI to get rid of the IVR doom loop? I mean, I should be able to just have a conversation with an AI chatbot at the call center and say, I'm calling up to cancel my policy, and they get me to the right team, instead of having to say very monolithic, cancel policy. I'm sure it's going to happen fast. But sticking to the telecom theme, what I wanted to ask you there, Damien, is I get the sense that AI, we're all using it, everybody's using it, but adoption in telecoms, particularly in go-to-market teams and frontline teams, I think it's not there, it's lacking. I mean, maybe the marketing teams are becoming a bit more productive with copy or ideas or coordinated campaigns, but frontline teams, I'm not seeing it. What's your thoughts, and what are you seeing out there with some of the clients that you have?
So I think this is a real challenge, and it's not just with telcos. And actually, JP, to your point, it's in banking as well. And I think what happens is businesses have a challenge because you have multiple departments, clearly, that all have to kind of orchestrate with one another. And I think what we see here is businesses don't really know how to approach the whole topic of AI, right? Because people still think, well, AI is just ChatGPT. And you're right, marketing departments, are now adopting, it for copy and doing, maybe a bit of creative, etc. But then what you have is, if somebody has an interest in AI within a department, then something happens, something moves. But in departments where there isn't somebody who's interested in AI, nothing happens. So you kind of get this weird mishmash of things where some departments do something and others don't. And I think the broader problem is businesses don't necessarily see AI, they kind of see it as a bit of an IT project, which actually is completely the wrong thing. It's a transformation project because it touches every single department. And if you allow departments to kind of go off and do their own thing, it's that kind of jazz band mentality, is like everyone doing their own thing at the same time. It then becomes a governance nightmare that the company then has to deal with. So you're going to end up with kind of these random acts of violence all over the company. And then what happens is nothing really comes of it. Marketing does quite well because they're able to create content and maybe move things along a bit further. But there's no strategy. There's no governance. There's no policy. And I think part of it is there's a lack of ownership. The departments or the owners of the company, the CEOs, the C-level team, don't really know where it fits. Or maybe they don't understand it enough And maybe they go, oh, it's just ChatGPT. No, it can actually be a dramatic wholesale change. JP, you talked about sort of business transformation. You can't transform a business any more than if you can pull AI into the business. And I'm not just like top down. So I think that's one of the challenges that I see, that there's no real owner for AI. And sometimes the IT team get thrown it and they're just like, it's not always an IT problem. It's something that goes across the entire business, and someone needs to be responsible for that. That can sit across the entire business, and can help orchestrate and look at the needs of each of the individual departments. So when we go in, for example, I go and talk to a business around sort of their AI strategy. I will talk to every single head of department. And I will understand their challenges, because now I can then see the strands, that kind of hub and spoke type approach of the overall business. Otherwise, the business it gets lumpy. Yeah. Certain departments do one thing and not another.
Sure.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we we completed a study on digital transformation about 5 years ago, and we asked, what are the challenges of digital transformation? Number one challenge is conflicting priorities. So each department has their own priorities. It's not enough resources, not enough money, and not enough talent to do the work that's required. And you look at those were digital transformation challenges, 5 years ago, as that was the buzzword. Now it's AI. We're seeing the same kind of behavior and challenges, conflicting priorities. It's a department leading the project, not the organization, the entire organization. And how do you overcome that? These silo structures.
So, guys, I love it. I'd throw you both that question. How would you? And Damien, I'll come to you first, and then JP. How would you help an organization fix that? Damien, you said you talk to every single department head. That's a great action. Brilliant. What else?
I think you have to work with the most senior person in the organization you can to be kind of the cheerleader, right? Because, and I think, JP, you've probably come across this in digital transformation. If somebody at the very top is not championing it, it is going to slowly just dissolve and disappear. It'll end up being just an ad hoc project that doesn't get seen through. Because one thing I find, it's part of the AI transformation, and it's the human part, which is you kind of get three types of people, right? You get 1/3 of people love it, they think it's brilliant, they embrace the technology. You get that third that don't care. But more important, you get that third that are genuinely scared. They think AI is going to come and take their jobs. They think AI is going to do that, that suddenly, they might end up having to do, more menial work or whatever it may be. And that's a real problem in AI transformation. And unfortunately, as humans can be, they can be challenging. Those individuals, it can be challenging. They can undermine the process through fear. And I think that's one thing I come across quite a lot. And I think what you have to do is listen to their concerns, understand what's driving that fear. Now, in some cases, in fact, most cases in my experience, it's a lack of education and understanding of what AI actually does, right? Because the reality is AI is not going to come and take most people's jobs. What AI will do is take parts of the job, freeing up more time for you to spend on the things that actually move the needle, which makes you a better employee.
I love that.
That's what it is.
Sure. JP, how about you?
Well, I'm listening and I'm going, the biggest challenge is not a clear vision of how AI benefits everyone. And again, I go back to banking. There's so many parallels when they introduced, mobile banking, and we launched these learning tables where people would come in and train consumers to use their mobile app or to use their online banking. The staff weren't supportive because they viewed that initiative as replacing their jobs. And I think AI has that same kind of undercurrent where employees are saying, okay, I know this is happening and this could replace my job. And so not having a clear vision of AI to your point, Damien, from the top saying, here's how we're embracing AI. Here's the priorities of implementation of AI. Here's why it's going to benefit the company. Here's how it's going to benefit the consumer. And more importantly, this is how it's going to make you a better employee. That's not having those conversations are not happening. What's happening is, the operations department are saying, we're spending a lot of time dealing with bill processing and accounting issues. Let's automate that using AI. Or the call center, we need to do more with less. So we need to make our staff more efficient in responding to consumers' complaints or concerns. Let's use UI to that. It's almost an efficiency, labor savings mindset. And when employees see that, they go, okay, well, I'm next, right? So how do you overcome those issues?
That's interesting. Let's dig a little deeper into your blog, Damien. And I just want to pick up on something that you kind of both said there, is about having this vision, having somebody centrally that will champion it. There was a news report this week that Meta is producing an AI clone of Mark Zuckerberg. Seriously, purely for intra-departmental communication. And I just thought that was so interesting, and clearly that's a huge, gigantic business at the forefront of AI that is absolutely championing it because they're putting him up there. But what that kind of led me to is a point in your blog, Damien, where you're talking about real-world application of AI and using knowledge that already exists inside your organization on a repeatable basis. And obviously that's what they're going to do. They're going to train something about Mark Zuckerberg and what's in his head. God help them. But what you were specifically talking about was like knowledge banks for staff. If you think about call centers for banking, for telecom, if you think about retail stores for telecom, I'm working with a client right now where their retail technology landscape is so complex. And I actually said to my client, being an advisor for your company is hard. And so one of the things that led us to is talking about this topic, and I'd like you to expand on it, of how you can use AI in a very practical way to create something that will then help train, assist lots and lots of your staff. So that's not job replacement, that's helping. So do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, and I thanks. Well, I think this is a really simple, easy to understand use case, especially within the retail space. And I think anyone who's watching this has probably been into a retail store, had to queue up, speaking to an agent, and the worst thing is you get an agent who's not very experienced. And we've all had this. And even if you're on the phone, right, you go, oh, hold on a second, I need to go and ask someone. And then you're on hold for 5 minutes, or the worst thing is you're chatting with the person in the retail store, and then they go, oh, I'm just going to go check with my manager. And the manager's talking to somebody, and you're sat and you're waiting, and eventually you're just like, oh, do you know what, I'll go. Yeah. I'll come back another time, and then you never do, right? So that is a challenge. So something like a retail knowledge base is really simple, because what you're essentially doing is you're building this huge repository of information that probably exists in the top person in the store's head. They know everything because they've been there for 5 years and all this sort of stuff. And I think this is a really important point about using AI for these types of use cases, is you get your best employee from day one. You don't get the whole learning experience. It takes me 6 months to get into the job and learn everything. Because what you can do is you can take all that information, all your workbooks, all your knowledge base, all your training materials, your pricing information, all that sort of stuff, and you can basically put it you can train a model. And then you could be something simple as a small chat interface. that someone can tap into. Maybe they've got a tablet or a mobile phone that's connected like a chatbot, or it can be done on voice. Very simple. You can just speak in. Now, one of the things that I come across on a fairly regular basis when I talk to clients about this sort of thing, is the concern around, if I use something like ChatGPT or Claude or even Gemini, how do I know that all my information is now not going to end up in the search results? And let's be honest, there have been examples of this shown. Exactly. And I think a lot of companies don't realize that there are privately hosted local models that they can put on their own infrastructure. You'll have to forgive the lighting. I live in St. Lucia, and the power can go a little funny every so often when we've got bad
I feel for you, Damien, just to interject. It's like degrees here in the UK. I'm sure you put a 2 in front of that, I think, as to what temperature you're. So forgive me if I don't give you any sympathy at all.
Yeah, no, it's just so you know, it's that's why. So I think one of the challenges is, again, comes back to this point, I think, JP, we touched upon earlier, is this education. No, you don't suddenly upload all your knowledge information into a project in ChatGPT. No, you don't do that. What you do is you look at, maybe some of the more local models, like Quen from Alibaba as a good example. You install that on your local infrastructure, and then so when I'm on now my tablet or my phone, I'm within my own internal network, and you train the model within the internal network. And I think that's, for me, is a really helpful use case, because then also you can look at, customer care can do the same.
Absolutely.
Right?
Then you start to get consistency across channel. I find this a lot with telecoms, is the retail store will say one thing, a call center will say another. Well, actually have a shared infrastructure there that is your company's information, and then you're going to get consistency of message. JP, I want to hand back to you. What else did you take from Damien's blog?
Well, that AI implementation is not a one-stop, one-click, and it happens. It's a very detailed process if done right. That there are specific steps outlined in the blog that you need to undertake to make this successful. And I think if we did a survey of the people listening to the podcast, and we said, okay, read Damien's blog, look at the list of activities. Did you skip any of these when you launched AI? Did you jump to tactical implementation? I have this problem, let's use AI and solve it, but not looking at the holistic picture of how this impacts the entire organization? I'd be kind of curious to see what the response from our audience would be on how they've approached AI, and did they go through the steps? And maybe you can walk us through at a very high level, Damien, the steps, because I think it's important to reinforce there's a journey.
Yeah, Jim, I think you're right, that there is a journey. And I think I'm going to be sound one of those people, everyone's like, we have to go through this process. The reality is, yes, you do have to go through a process. Otherwise, and I like to call it, you get the random acts of violence all over the company, right, which becomes really messy. But more importantly, what happens is it doesn't work. So then people get frustrated and they go, we tried AI and it didn't work. No, it was like it was a random project. So there has to be an overarching strategy. The company needs to understand, what are we going to be approaching? What do we want to use AI for? I think that's the first thing. Now, it's got to kind of, and then to your point, talk to the different departments. Find out what the challenge is within each of the departments. Now, I'm actually a great believer. I talk about sort of the overarching strategy, but sometimes once you've gone through that process and you're clear on your approach, and bear in mind, you've got the external strategy, which could be, we're going to use AI for our customer care, for knowledge base, for marketing purposes, etc. But then what about the internal? How is HR going to use it? Like, could be simple as, we have a chat bot so our staff can get, rather than keep pinging HR for a company letter because they want to get a bank loan or whatever it is, they can just ping HR and get it from the chat, just as example. So you can have those sorts of things. But then the reality when it comes to execution, pick one thing, something simple, something that people can get behind that has a really nice, easy, doesn't even have to be an ROI. It could be a massive money saver or time saver. Both of you, you guys have, worked across, potentially multiple places. How many of those places at some point has had an intern that their job is every morning, someone has to do something with a spreadsheet, fill it in, spend 3 hours doing this, that, and the other. Like we've all
People
been
have
there,
full-time
right?
jobs for that still inside Telco, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But it could be as simple as once you define the strategy, it could be like, right, we want to start saving time. We want to start freeing up because maybe it's resources a challenge within the business. Okay, so part of the strategy is how do we free up people's time? Okay, let's look at one particular job that is taking a lot of time. And I think Will, you're thinking about the retail side of things, or even like field sales or whatever it is. People out on the street, they've got lots of paper, they're filling it in, they're meeting people. Then who's going to fill all that? Someone's got to data entry all that information.
I was staggered.
Could be something simple
I
as
had
that.
a delivery here last week from a big, well-known kind of building supplies retailer in the UK. I get to talking to the driver, and he's telling me that every night he gets the weigh bills from this retailer, and he manually enters them in a spreadsheet, so that he's got the weight of his wagon all down. So if he's ever stopped by he can do it. And then what he does is he goes into Google Maps and he prints off a map and he just manually goes around and says, well, I'm going there first, there second, there third. And I was staggered. And he said, and he's not getting paid for this. It's like an hour and a half, 2 hours every night is what he does. And I said, I could automate that in 4 or 5 hours for you. And his mind was blown. His mind was blown. And this, I think, is the opportunity. And that's, I know the point of your blog, and this is what we all passionately believe, is the real world application of AI, getting things executed and implemented that can make people's lives better. That's the opportunity ahead of us for sure.
Yeah, and we also have to be careful because the average consumer now is AI enabled. I think it's some crazy number in our study. 67% use AI to do investment planning, and 56% of them believe the data AI is giving them is more accurate than their banker, right? And so when you think of telcos, those consumers are coming into a telco. They've done their research. They've used AI to do an analysis, comparison. They're coming into that telco either online, retail, or phone, very, very well trained and knowledgeable, much more knowledgeable than I would say the staff are, because they're focused on selling their product, not looking at how that product fits in the entire telco ecosystem competitive set. And so I think there is this concern that if organizations don't embrace AI effectively as part of, Damien, your plan, that they're going to be vulnerable to customers coming in being smarter than them.
Absolutely. You want to have some final words on that?
It's already happening now.
Sorry, I was just going to say, do you want to have some final words on that? We're almost at the end, last couple of minutes. Lead us forward.
Yeah, I think it's, but I think, JP, it's happened for a while anyway. Actually, even since the advent of the internet, I think we've had a situation where customers are coming into stores and know more than the staff do. And again, coming back to my, AI, if it happens to take over certain roles, then okay, because if that AI knows more than the person in the store and can help and provide a better service to the customers, so they maybe buy more, maybe buy something a bit more expensive, whatever. It's a win-win because the business makes more money, the customer's happy, customer gets what they want, and so I think that to me is probably one of the more important things.
Yeah. So if you were to give the audience one takeaway that they should be doing tomorrow after listening to our podcast, what would it be?
Wow, that's a great question because there's so many things.
You've got to pick one.
Okay, pick one. Wow. I think if I was getting to pick one, I would say, depending where they were, look at the department or the area that they're in. Look at what's their most like biggest pain point, and then start looking at the ways that AI might be able to solve that pain point. That may be a very tactical point. I mean, there's multiple things they could do, but just as a way of thinking about almost not AI as a threat, but AI as a supported, like how can AI fix my problem versus, oh, I don't want anything to do with AI because it's going to take my job.
Yeah. So AI is an enabler.
Exactly, yeah.
Sure.
Well, that wraps it up, Will. Yeah, Damien, thank you. Yeah, that was great. But please read, we have a hyperlink to Damien's blog. Please read it. It's very, very detailed. And it provides a great roadmap. If you haven't established one, just copy his roadmap and give him a call for advice.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for being on, Damien. Thanks as ever, JP. And
pleasure.
Have a great
Thank you for your time, guys.
day and enjoy the sunshine, Damien.
It's raining today. Thanks, Will.
Thanks very much, everybody.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye
All
now.
right. Bye-bye. Bye.